In short, he argues American schools are turning out students who are not intellectually incompetent, but also morally confused, emotionally alienated, and socially maladjusted. The problem is not merely that Johnny can't read or even that Johnny can't think. Johnny doesn't know what thinking is, says Dr. Sowell, because thinking is so often confused with feeling in many public schools. Talk about the social phenomenon you call affective education.
A great deal of time and energy are spent on things which are non-academic subjects, which are essentially psychological kinds of subjects, exercises. And this is known as affective education, as if you can somehow educate people's feelings rather than to educate their intellect. And the problem is that most public school teachers have no such qualifications, if anyone has such qualifications. But certainly they are not psychiatrists or psychologists. The idea is that the child is supposed to make his own decisions, and he's supposed to pick his own values on which to make those decisions. So the whole history of the human race is sort of thrown out the window, and Johnny is supposed to start and draw upon his entire 8 or 9 years of experience in the world to decide what his values ought to be. Ben Stein, a reporter in Los Angeles, and he asked this graduating senior who was considered the smartest kid in the class, what do you know about the Vietnam War? And he said the Vietnam War was when North and South Korea were fighting, and they drew a line along the 38th parallel and so on. And Ben Stein said, would it bother you to know that that's completely wrong? He said, no. And he said, then what you just said, that it was that his feelings were valued, what his thoughts were valued, and that was it.
Now, isn't that of some worth if you do have a child who, for example, has done nothing but learn by rote? Aren't you attempting to bring out the fullness of that young person and get that person to reflect and think and meditate?
If you think the confusing the Vietnam War with the Korean War is thinking and meditating, well, then of course that's very nice. The tragedy is that these kids have no conception of thinking. And if we're talking about adding something as an extra along the fringes, fine. But when you see how far behind we are behind almost every large industrial nation, or even behind Korea, for heaven's sake, you wonder what makes them think that we have the luxury of spending our time on these kinds of little experiments in the classroom.